Canvas. Okay, got it.
I forgot to start recording. Sorry.
Yeah, I saw that. So I really appreciate the way you've added every single task that we need to do to the Canvas app, and it shows up there as a task that needs to be done and shows us the due date. I think that's really helpful. None of the courses that I've done thus far have had every single assignment like that. Like the reading assignments wouldn't have a thing on the app. Like, I don't know, you can't see that. Anyway.
Yeah, I thought that was strange. So this course, all of those McGraw-Hill ones were just like dumped into like this one folder. And I was like, and so you'd have students going, I don't know where to find this. And I thought, well, if it's not that hard for me just to add them to each module, right? And then list them by due date. So I'm glad that's helpful.
And your emails that you're sending out each week with that listing is awesome too. So in my gathering, we have an accounting certificate group that we've done that we do a short Zoom on that, and none of their instructors have done anything near as comprehensive as you have. So they were quite impressed. I'm jealous that you are my instructor.
Well, I mean, I don't like to brag, but right. Thanks.
Yeah. So it's been, yeah. So I shared your document that had some of those links to Brother Stanton and stuff with them. They were
okay. Yeah, and I shared that also, like like here in like the tutoring resources. I shared it there as well. And some people really like this tutoring resource area. They feel like they post questions and they get answered. But I've heard other people feel like they're posting stuff there and they're not going to get. So I don't know. Again, it's another tool. Use it if it's valuable to you. And you can right here arrange live tutoring appointments with but these are, these tutors I think are at BYUI's campus. And so, and they're actually like student tutors who are like teaching assistants who've taken the class and done well in it. And then like the next year, they're tutors. So, I mean, yeah, general, if there's no general questions, do you want me to try to go through a little bit of the chapter material, like do a little, I don't know what you'd call it, a brief little lecture and cover some of the concepts, or I guess this is an evolving meeting, right? We can do what we want in it. No one's going to tell us how to run our meeting. We can do what we want. I almost channeled Liam Neeson for a moment. I was almost like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but we are going to get through this class together, like that. Sorry, that's it's not great, but I'm working on it. Maybe a little Scottish back in there would help. A little out of brogue. Anyway, so let's do that then. Let's see. And, but a lot of this stuff is stuff that I kind of went over in my little videos. So I don't want to, again, this is just me kind of going over a couple things. So I think what matters really, no, we don't need that. So we'll start here. So the way we're breaking things down in accounting, okay, is we're going to start with what's called the fundamental or basic accounting equation, which is that assets should equal liabilities plus equities, okay? And so in order to start with that, we have to explain like what an asset is and what a liability is and what equity is. And so an asset account is just something a business can own. So common asset accounts are like cash, accounts receivable, inventory, these sorts of things. Cash is what it sounds like, right? It's money that the business has. Accounts receivable is a little bit more confusing because it's money owed to us by our customers. This happens a lot when businesses will deliver goods or services to a customer and then say, hey, you have 30 days to pay. And so that creates an asset called an account receivable, money owed to you. Inventory is stuff that we sell, right? The stuff that we have available to sell to our customers. And other assets could be like supplies, buildings, land, equipment. Those are all assets. So stuff we own. Liabilities are debts that we owe to other people. The most common is called an accounts payable. This is when our supplier says to us, here's your stuff, pay me in 30 days. So we owe them money, but it's not a super formal arrangement where we like drew up and we're paying them interest and stuff. It's just this sort of informal arrangement where we owe some money to somebody. We can have more formal things like notes payable, where we actually go to a bank and we fill it out and we say, I'm going to pay this much interest. And that's, so anything with payable in its name, that's a liability. Anything that has receivable in its name is an asset. So those are maybe some keywords that will help when you're seeing an account, that will help you with it. Recognize that like accounting doesn't have very much hard math in it, but it does have challenging categorizations, I guess, where we have to figure out, where does this account belong? Is it an asset? Is it a liability account? Or is it an equity account? And that can be confusing. So equity is a little more confusing because I think most people intuitively get the idea of ownership of like an asset, like, oh, I own a truck, or I own a building, or I have cash. That's intuitive. It makes sense with the world we live in. And most of us understand debt a little bit, like I owe money, I bought a truck, but I didn't have all the money, so I borrowed some. But equity is a little more confusing. For me, the easiest way to think of equity is to like reframe this equation: assets equal liabilities plus equity. And what I mean by reframe it is I'm going to move liabilities to the other side. So we could say equity equals assets minus liabilities. So all the stuff I own as a business minus the stuff that I owe, that's the equity. And a lot of times you'll hear people call it owner's equity, because really what it means is the amount of the business that actually belongs to the owner, which is the assets of the business minus any debts of the business. If you had a house and it was a $300,000 house, and you borrowed $200,000 to buy it, okay, we would say that your equity in the house was 100,000. Well, why? Because the house is worth 300,000, the asset. The liability, the amount of debt, is 200,000. So the amount that actually belongs to you is 100,000. 200,000 belongs to the bank, I guess, and 100,000 belongs to you. So that's all equity means. It's the amount of the business that actually belongs to the owners, or it's the assets of the business minus any liabilities. So let me put in here right now, if a question comes up as I'm talking, we're not in a classroom where I can see you well, okay? Or, sometimes I can see the wheels turning, but maybe you're thinking about the fact that your kid is off camera and is saying something, I don't know. Please feel free to just unmute yourself and cut in and ask the question. Okay, I won't get offended. I'm easily offended, but not about that. It has to be about like hockey or something. I get offended and talk bad about certain teams. But about this, totally cool. All right, so that's the basic accounting equation and the basic accounts: assets, liabilities, and equities. So I'm not gonna take a bunch of time I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute to go through that more in depth, but I do want to show you. Let's see. I just got to bring up something else for you here. Oh, I thought I had it up. I'm sorry. Give me a moment. I apologize. Sorry, it might take me a little longer than I thought. I got to go get it. In fact, I'm going to share this with you real quick before I get this. One other thing, I don't mean to be hopping around here, but there's this cool section at the end of each chapter in the textbook. And it's called, also, don't judge me for all the tabs I have open. Okay, those weren't meant for you to see. my wife's always like, she's like a tab judger. She'll come in and be like, how can you even see anything? And I'll be like, it's my life and I'm living it. Tab judger. So at the end of each chapter, there's this, it's called, first of all, there's this, it's called Need to Know Comprehensive. And what it is, it's like this big comprehensive problem, but then it like gives you like the whole answer key to it too. And usually it like reviews in that problem, like all the major concepts from that chapter. And I don't, it depends on how your brain works. Some people just like to read through stuff and they're like, good, I got it. For me to see a problem and then see it worked out, that helps me. And so that's one thing I just wanted to show you that I think people miss because it's kind of at the end of the chapter. It's called Need to Know. And then the other thing is at the end of the chapter, there's this thing called summary cheat sheet. We're not encouraging cheating, by the way. It's just the name of it. Okay. But it, like in 1 to 3 pages, breaks down all the major concepts of the chapter. And I think it's a really, really great tool for reviewing. So that I just wanted to show you that because I think for whatever reason, if we're reading through the textbook, we tend to read to the end of until like the problems are there and then be like, oh, I finished the chapter, not realizing this summary information is at the back. And to me, it's the most valuable stuff. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, just sum up for me. Okay, I don't need to talk to you for an hour. Just give me it in 10 minutes, man. Anyway, so I wanted to show you that because I think it's a good tool. And now I'll go back to, sorry, I got too many tabs open. Don't tell my wife. I'll never hear the end of it. There it is. So I'm gonna go to, what was I going to? Oh, yeah, I was going to the Connect library. And I was gonna open, this is what I thought I had open for you guys, so I apologize. The chapter 1. Oh, really? Do it. Open. There it goes. All right. All right, we know why it's crucial, because we should be honest, right? All right, so this is what I wanted to go through with you guys. Sorry, I apologize again. I thought I had it open. All right, so we just learned about the accounting equation that assets equal liabilities plus equity. And so what I want to do is kind of review how different transactions will actually impact that accounting equation. Okay, so I have to, for me, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, but I still have to, like, every time I see a transaction, I have to go through this process in my brain. And first I have to like say, okay, what are the accounts involved in the transaction? So which is, I don't say involved, I say what accounts are impacted by this transaction. And then I say, what type of account are they? So I categorize the account. And then third, I ask myself, what's happening with the account? Is it going up or is it going down? Okay. And so I still, like, I've been doing this a long time and I still go through the same process every single time. I just do it faster because I've been doing it longer, right? Like, you could probably think of things like that in your life, that you follow a certain process that you think is pretty simple, but a person just learning it thinks it's really involved and it takes them a lot longer. So I want to walk through some transactions. So the first transaction of this new business, the owner is a person named Chaz Taylor, which I think sounds like a cool surfer person. So I'm just going to picture Chaz that way. Like, hey, what's up, Chaz? Like that. So Chaz invests $30,000 cash to start the business called Fast Forward. So I would say in my head, if I saw that, okay, what accounts are involved? I know that business's cash is involved. And then an equity account, which is just, we call it the capital account for the owner. That represents money that the owner puts into the business. Okay, we just list it as usually the person's name and capital. So, all right. And then I'd say, what kind of accounts are those? And I'd say, well, cash is an asset and capital account is equity. Okay, because we really only get equity in one of two ways. Either we contribute it, the owner puts money into the business, or we earn it. The business earns money in the form of revenue by doing business. And our equity really only can drop in one of two ways. Either the owner pulls money out of the business for their own use, that's called an owner draw, or the business expends cash to operate, right? That's it. So that's what impacts our equity. So then I say, okay, so I have cash and asset and it's increasing, and I have Taylor Capital, which is an equity account, and it's increasing as well. So then I can say, okay, well, how does that impact the accounting equation? Well, my assets increasing and my equity is increasing. And then I always have to make sure that the rule that assets equal liabilities plus equity have to balance out. So I must always have the same amount on the asset side as I do the liabilities plus equity side. Things have to stay in balance. And that's why the fundamental accounting equation is fundamental. It has to balance. Okay. In time, a lot of these things right now, it's kind of like me trying to teach you a card game, right? Like I'm explaining rules to you, but as you do it more, it becomes easier. It's a little confusing at first when you're learning something new. All right, so we have a second transaction. The company purchases supplies for cash. And so again, I'm going to ask myself, well, what accounts are going to be impacted here? And the accounts that will be impacted will be the cash account and a supplies account. Well, what type of account are they? Cash is an asset and supplies is an asset. Okay, they're both things that the business can own. And then what's happening to them? Well, supplies will be going up because we're purchasing supplies, but cash will be going down because we're paying out cash. And so that's how this transaction will impact our accounts. We'll have a decrease in cash and an increase in supplies, and both are assets. So if I put that into our equation, I'll see that cash is decreased by 2,500 and supplies is increased by 2,500. Also, some of you know this already, but recognize in accounting, when we put a number in parentheses, that means it's a negative number. So instead of putting a negative in front of it, we put it in parentheses. Why? I don't know. Some accounting person thought it up a long time ago. I don't know. It is clearer, I guess. It's nice and clear. That's what we're doing. So then we'll say, okay, I had 30,000 in cash. I just spent 2,500. So now I have 27,500 in cash. I have 2,500 in supplies. So my assets total 30,000. And my equity still is 30,000. So I'm in balance. Assets equal liabilities plus equity. All right. We purchase equipment for cash. $26,000 worth. The accounts involved will be cash and equipment, both assets. Again, my cash is going down, my equipment assets going up. You'll start to see there's a pattern of some types of transactions occur much more often than others. I call this kind of an asset for an asset. Usually it's cash for some other asset, because think about what businesses do. They purchase assets. And then the other one we'll see a lot is cash for expenses. We'll use our cash to pay for an expense. Those are the most common sorts of transactions a business sees. So then what does that look like on our accounting equation? Cash goes down by 26,000. Equipment goes up by 26,000. Our total assets is still 30,000 and our total liabilities plus equity. And I say, uh-oh, Chaz, you only have $1,500 in cash left. You should probably, be aware, right? Although it depends on your stage of life. There's been plenty of times in my life where if I had 1,500 in cash, I thought I was doing pretty good. So it just depends on where you're at right now. So my wife and I have 8 kids, and that pretty much means that you're poor like all the time, no matter how much you make. They're expensive. They eat a lot. Now we only have 2 at home, and so I got to tell you, it's kind of lovely. But we have grandkids, and so then they come over, and it's like, I'm like, oh, how did we raise 8 kids? Because I can barely handle like 1 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I will say that my 3-year-old, she is she's destructive and ill-tempered. So, but I love her anyway, and she'll grow past that. But right now, last week, she went to her Oma's house, and when they keep all the medication locked up, and they keep an eye on her because they know how she is. But then my daughter was having to take care of Oma, and she found one of those medicine things that have the days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that a 3-year-old can pop open. And she ate a handful of old person medication, which was mostly blood pressure medication. Anyway, so they got to spend the night in the ER. That was great. And she laid there sick and said, "No, don't eat grandma's medicine." Okay. So that was terrifying. All right. Totally off subject. Sorry about that. Just a little about me.
So I have a question.
Okay.
What's the difference between accounts payable and notes payable?
So good question. So accounts payable is an informal relationship. And what I mean by that is almost always it comes up informally as a relationship between a customer and their supplier. So, so if I buy something from my supplier, the person who sells me supplies, we'll call it that, and the supplier says, "Hey, you have 30 days to pay me." That generates an account payable because I owe that supplier for those supplies. A note payable is usually a much more formal relationship where we draw up, it's actually called a note, a document that stipulates who will pay, how much, what interest rate we're paying at, et cetera. And so they're both payables. Typically, accounts payable are short-term in nature, 30 to 60 days. And notes payable are typically long-term in nature, greater than a year. Sometimes.
So would that be like a notes payable? Would that be considered like an auto loan?
Yeah, that's a note. And then mortgages are usually considered separately because they're a note, but they're a specific kind of note that's asset backed, meaning, instead of, if someone doesn't pay you on a note, usually you can like take them to court, but like on a mortgage, there's a house backing that up and they can take your house away. But yes, an auto loan is a note. That answer the question? All right, I'm done talking about medicine, sorry, and babies. Let's see. Oh, thanks, whoever said I look too young to be a grandpa. I got 4 grandkids and 3 married kids. All right, and 1 on a mission, and I bet she'll be married within a year of getting back because she's looking to get married, which scares me. All right, not really. I love being married, but All right, let's look at another transaction here. We purchase supplies on credit. So here, when it says we purchase supplies on credit, this is going to create our account payable. So our asset will be increasing, supplies, but we're not paying cash. So we don't have cash going down in this case. We have a liability called accounts payable, also increasing. And so it'll look like this on the accounting equation. Supplies will go up by 7,100, and then accounts payable will also go up by 7,100. And now you can see we have 37.1 on each side, so we're all in balance. There's a number of these, so I'm going to kind of get faster as we go through them. Again, just jump in if you have a question. You won't offend me. All right. So we're going to look at some now that have revenues and expenses. So we provide services for cash. So we can do consulting for 4,200. The customer pays us cash right away. So our cash asset will be increasing, and our equity, called revenues, will also be increasing. So revenue just means money we earn from selling what we sell. This business sells consulting. Okay, so sometimes it's a service, and sometimes it's it could be goods if we're like a retail store that sells stuff. if we're Costco and we sell poutine to millions of hungry Canadians. Anyway, I think it's lame because at our Costco's, it's like hot dogs or not great pizza. Cheese curd and fries. I mean, that sounds way better. All right. So here's what it'll look like in the accounting equation. Our cash increases by 4,200. Good thing because our balance was getting low. And then our revenue increases. And you'll see that revenue increases our equity. Okay. Again, the only way a business increases equity is by the owner putting in capital or by earning revenue. And the only way it decreases equity, we'll see in a minute, is by the owner drawing money out of the business or by expenses. Okay, that's really it. Yeah, I love your little circles. Let's move forward. All right. So here we have payment of expense in cash. So we paid $1,000 rent and $700 salaries to our employees. So our accounts involved are cash going down, right? Because we're paying it. Rent expense, which is an equity, and salaries expense, which is an equity. Now, this is a little confusing because we say the terminology we use is that our expenses are increasing, but expenses increasing have the effect of reducing equity, of decreasing equity. So that's a little confusing. I'll tell you the reason it's confusing is because for beginners, they always present it this way, but then like in another chapter, we're going to learn, oh, revenue and expenses aren't actually equity accounts. They're their own kind of accounts that impact equity. But right now, so it can just seem a little confusing at first. So because it'll tell you right here, remember, yeah, you can read it. I won't read it to you because you're grown adults. All right. So here's what it will look like. Our cash goes down by 1,000 and then by 700 for these two transactions. And then our expenses, which we just said, the expenses going up, but you'll see we'll show them as a reduction to equity. Okay, so that's a little confusing, but just recognize when an expense increases, it reduces our equity. Okay. That's one of the fundamental truths of the no, it's not, it's a truth of accounting, right? Like every time a bell rings, an angel gets wings, and when expenses go up, equity goes down. All right. Sorry, I'm a little random tonight. My students are like, we love that he's random, but then we can't follow his lecture. So I'm not sure we really love it. I'll do better. I'll fly straight. All right. Transaction 8. Provide services and facilities for credit. So here we provide consulting services, $1,600, and we rent our facilities to people for $300. And again, for credit, meaning we're not getting paid. Instead, the money is going to be owed to us. Okay. So our accounts receivable asset, money owed to us, is going to go up, and our consulting revenue account is going to go up, and our rental revenue account's going to go up. So you'll see the 1,900 on accounts receivable. Again, that just means money that we're owed, and then an increase to our revenue here. And again, everything has to balance out. We have to have 40, the same amount of total assets as we do liabilities and equity each time. I actually love that about accounting because you can check each time, right? And make sure you're in balance. It gives you like a way to do that. There's this funny thing that like when I'm teaching at a secular school, students will be like doing their work, and when everything balances, I'll hear them be like they'll be like, that was satisfying. And I'm like, satisfying maybe is a good term, but I believe that God's universe is a universe of order. And when things balance and we feel that order, we touch the infinite just a little, right in that one moment when things balance. And I think that's what that satisfying feeling is. And so, I love watching that and seeing how people there's a sense of wholeness when everything comes together, and it's a good feeling. And it's more than just satisfying. It's tapping into something bigger than us. But I can't say that at Arizona State University. well, I could, but I don't think anybody would listen. So we receive, so for transaction 9, remember we had this accounts receivable, meaning they owed us money. Now they're going to actually pay us. So the customer is going to pay us the money they owe us. So our cash will be going up, and our accounts receivable, also an asset, will be going down. So you'll notice we're not recording revenue here because we already earned the revenue before and recorded that. Now we're just recording the exchange of assets, right? The one asset, accounts receivable, goes down, and then the other asset, cash, goes up. We're getting cash in exchange for that accounts receivable. So here's what it'll look like: increase to cash, decrease to accounts receivable, meaning the overall balance actually isn't even going to change, right? Because we had it up and down on the same side. And so we're all still in balance. All right, here we're going to pay some of our accounts payable, some of that money we owed for the, I think it was the supplies we purchased before. We're going to pay 900 on that. So our cash will go down because we're paying, and our accounts payable, the liability, will also go down because we're paying it off. We'll have less debt. So you'll see a reduction to cash and a reduction to accounts payable. And so, the people always will say, so like accounting was thought up by some monk in Italy, like in did you guys have to read that section? I've always wondered like how valuable that is to know. Some Italian monk was like, hey, I'm gonna, I thought, anyway, I won't make any like Mario jokes, but I can't do like my Mario accent. Probably be considered inappropriate. But some monk thought this up. And even though we have computers and everything doing this work for us today, the system is essentially unchanged since 400 AD. And so we're using the same dual entry accounting system this whole time. So when people will be like, well, why does this have to be this way? And you're like, well, because that's how it works. Because it's been, we've been using it that way for over 1,000 years now. So, but you'll notice like just this interrelationship, assets equal liabilities plus equity, holds true each time. Really, we either have to increase an asset and decrease an asset, and then there'll be no changes to liabilities and equity. We could, if an asset goes down, then either a liability has to go down or an equity has to go down. Or if an asset goes up, either a liability or an equity have to go up. And that's it. That's the sum of all the relationships. If I get cash, it has to come from somewhere. It either came from selling off an asset or borrowing it or contributing it or selling something to somebody. That's the only way for me to increase my cash. And so it's one of those things that after you work with it for a while, you're like, how did this seem so complicated up front? But I get that right now it's all new. I'm trying to like tell you, don't worry, it's all going to come. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, this wasn't as hard as I thought. So now the owner takes money out of the business. So our cash asset will go down, and our withdrawals account, okay, sometimes it's just called an owner draw, will go up. Again, these owner draws are kind of like, they look like expenses in the sense that when they go up, they're reducing equity, okay? And so it's a little bit confusing. So again, we'll see cash going down and then a reduction to equity here for the owner withdrawal. All right. So when we get to the end of the period, at the end of the month or whatever we're tracking, we have a summary of transactions, and then we'll have balances. So we started with zero cash actually, right? And then we added 30,000 in our first transaction, and now we're down to 4,800. We aren't owed any money. We have 9,600 in supplies, 26,000 in equipment. We owe 6,200 still on our accounts payable because we only paid off 900 of it. 30,000 put in by the owner, 200 taken out by the owner, 6,100 earned through selling stuff to people, and 1,700 spent on operating the business. If you think about it, expenses are really just the cost of earning that revenue, how much you had to spend in order to earn the money. So we can summarize those things at the end of the time period. All right. I know it's been long with a lot of me talking, and I apologize for that. One last thing to look at are the basic financial statements. And so the basic financial statements that we'll learn about right now are the income statement, the statement of owner's equity, and the balance sheet, and then the statement of cash flows. So this is right out of the book. Okay. So this top one is called an income statement. I know you guys have been working with this already on some of the stuff you're doing, but I just want to talk through it a little. It summarizes revenues and expenses. So money brought in through operating and money paid out through the operation of the business. So this business brought in 5,800 in consulting revenue, 300 in rent revenue. So we had a total revenue of 6,100, paid out 1,700. And so our revenue minus our expenses is called our net income. If we have a situation where we have more expenses than we had revenue, that happens sometimes, then this changes to net loss, okay, instead of net income. So the business could have a net loss. That does happen. And we have to do this statement first, because then this number, net income, is going to be used to prepare our statement of owner's equity. So this business, because it's brand new, starts with $0 in owner's equity. Then 30,000 gets added by the owner, plus another 4,400 gets added through net income, meaning the revenues minus the expenses of the business. And then 200 is paid out. So at the end of the month, they now have 34,200 in owner's equity. If we were going to do this in January, our starting amount would be the same as the ending amount from December. So next month, they'll start with 34,200, add any other investments, add any net income, subtract any dividends. And so that's how we prepare that. The balance sheet summarizes our assets, our liabilities, and our equity. And so the balance sheet summarizes that fundamental accounting equation, right? Assets equal liabilities plus equity. And so you'll see that the assets have to balance out with the total liabilities and equity. Some people think that's why it's called a balance sheet, but it's not. It's actually a balance sheet because it shows the balances of each of the accounts. One thing you might notice, the income statement and the statement of owner's equity both they give you information for a period of time. So this says for the month ended December 31st. So this summarizes all revenues earned and expenses incurred during the month of December. And this also summarizes any investments, net income, and withdrawals during the month of December. But the balance sheet doesn't cover a period of time. You'll see it just has a given date on it, because it's saying the balances of these accounts, the balances of the asset accounts, liability and equity accounts are this as of this date. Now that distinction will become important a little bit later, that these measure a period of time. This gives you kind of a snapshot in a moment in time. Last one is the statement of cash flows. So that is showing you the balance sheet again for reference. But the statement of cash flows is broken down into 3 sections. We have our cash flows from operating activities, our cash flows from investing activities, and our cash flows from financing activities. And so operating activities is any revenues or expenses that we have earned or incurred and paid in cash. So if you remember, we had some revenues that we earned but didn't get paid cash for right away. And so sometimes at the end of the month, you'll still be owed money. So your revenue on your income statement might not match up perfectly with the cash you received from your customers. Okay. So we do the statement of cash flows as a separate statement so we can keep track of how cash is changing, how it's flowing into and out of the business. So if a business was a pure cash business, meaning every transaction they received cash right when they did it, and every purchase they ever made, they paid cash right when they did it, well, then this would match up exactly with their income statement, right? Because the revenues and expenses would match the cash coming in and out. But they often don't in real life. So this business received $6,100 from their customers and paid $5,100 for expenses, meaning $1,000 of cash was provided by their operating activities. Investing activities are when we purchase assets that we're going to use for a long period of time. So this is usually things like equipment, land, buildings, vehicles, things like that. Okay. And so in this case, they purchased $26,000 in equipment. So we would list that as a negative 26,000 because it's 26,000 in cash being paid out of the business. And then financing activities is any borrowing the business does, or any money received from the owners, paid in to the owners, or money paid out to the owners or paid out on that borrowing. And so they had 30,000 received by the owner and 200 paid out to the owner. So the summary is they received $1,000 in cash from their operating activities. They paid out 26,000 from their investing activities. They received 29,800 from their financing. And so when we add those up, 1,000 minus 26,000 plus 29,800, we had a net increase to cash of $4,800. And then we can summarize that by saying there was 0 at the beginning. The increase plus the beginning gives us the balance at the end. And then we can match that up with the cash balance on our balance sheet, should match. So that was a really quick, I know didn't seem quick, it was a lot of time, but a really quick overview of a lot of material. Like I said, in that additional study material, I posted videos broken down by part if you want to look at them again, if you think that would be helpful. That's there for you. I'll also be posting this recording in the announcements tonight too. So if anybody wasn't able to come, or if you just like, he said something and I want to roll back and remember what he said there, that'll be posted in there for you. All right. Questions either about the stuff I just talked about or something on the homework that you had a question about, something like that.
I
Or
have
we
a question.
good. Okay.
So in the in the homework, the chart that goes across where it has the columns with cash, accounts receivable, supplies, accounts payable, capital, and then the fees, and you have the boxes that you put the transactions down, kind of like what you did, but you did like the positive, excuse me.
Do you want to tell me which homework and I'll actually navigate to it?
Oh, let me see. So it's the Excel 2 spreadsheet.
Oh, Excel. Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Sure. Let me set it.
It's like probably just
I'm going to stop sharing mine and then I'm going to, where is it at? Allow others to share theirs. Because sharing is caring. Let's see. One participant. Okay, all participants. There it is. All right, so you should be able to share your screen now.
Got it. Yep. 1 second. And it's this one.
Also, hey everybody, just so you know, if you ever have to only be here for part of this because you have other things, nobody will think you're rude if you just take off. So just always know that. Don't feel like, oh man, I don't want to be seen as a person who's cutting out on a meeting. I understand people got stuff. All right.
Okay, so my question is here like under rent and wages and utilities expense. So in your sample that you did, you put them in as credits. I mean, because they would subtract from that from your owner's equity. But because of how this is laid out, this is really, we want them to be positive on here, right?
Yes, because
that math is happening.
So I'm giving credit either way because I feel like this is laid out a little like.
Okay.
So if you put negative 2,500 for this,
it would have been you would accept it either way,
right?
Because I was just looking at the math in the video, and that's what. So he was doing it as adding these columns, subtracting these, and if these were negative, would it work to do that? So okay, that's my
correct. But yeah, but I don't think that's clear, and so
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? You had enough? I have a sort of limitation how long my tailbone can handle me sitting in the chair before. It's like state conference, right? And you're like, that's why everybody like gets there like 30 minutes early so they can have a soft seat. But at least at our stake.
Yeah.
And then you feel guilty if you get a good one, and then there's like an elderly lady who comes in, you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to move back to the hard seats. I can't do it. All right. If we're good, and then let's call it good. That's enough for
Thank
one
you for
night.
your time.
Oh, well, thank you. I again, if this sort of thing is helpful, we can keep doing this. If we decide, you know, lecture is, we don't need lecture, we need more like just talking about things, and that, then we can adjust. Okay. I'm willing for this meeting to be whatever is helpful to you. What's hard though is when you have 10 people, then you have to find out what's helpful to 10 people, right? And one person be like, I already knew that. And so you just do the best you can.
Sorry to interrupt. I felt like what you taught was very like on point. Are you trying to meet at a specific time each week, or how often are you trying to meet?
Yeah, so I plan to be here on Zoom every Thursday at 7 p.m. I know that won't work always for everybody, but to me, just having a consistent time, you know, is the way it works. I will record it too for people who can't be here. When I put out that survey, it was like, you know, some people were just like, I wouldn't look at it anyway, which is fine. That's actually good to know, right? Like, so yeah, the plan is to have a regular meeting time, 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight, so Idaho time, or Utah time for those of you in Utah, every week on Thursday. I do have like girls camp, young women's camp coming up in a few weeks. And so I'll just have to let you know in advance. Like if there's a week, then I can't be here. And if you can't be here, I won't judge you. I mean, maybe a little, but not really. Like, I see, that's cool. They said they were going to be at the meeting, but no. Apparently vacation, I don't know. Okay, yeah.
I think this is good, and today was good. You introduced all the concepts there, the things little questions we had, but more we go, I think more complex is going to be the assignment, more questions we have, because we're going to be making more mistakes as we go. So we could do a little bit of both, like a little bit of you explaining, and then if they didn't answer questions and we go for questions like Deanna just did it, like, and asked it. I had kind of the same question, but you already had answered me that before.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll just see, because some stuff will be more confusing, right? And others, you know, that's learning anything new. All right, well, anybody volunteer for a closing prayer?
I will.
All right, thanks.
Lord, our kind Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the many opportunities that thou blesses us with. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to learn and study and increase our education. And we're grateful for the time that Brother Fox has spent to help us to be able to do that. We pray, Heavenly Father, that our mind will be enlightened and that we can be able to remember and recall the things that we learned. We pray for thy Spirit to be with us, and this we do in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great night. And thanks for making the effort to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.